When I first saw her, I stopped breathing. A bear, huge, dark, and silent, stood in the middle of the trail, staring straight at me. For a moment, the world froze. No wind, no birds, just her and me. My fingers tightened around the rifle slung across my chest, but I didn't lift it. Something in her eyes held me like chains. She wasn't growling. She wasn't charging. She wasn't even afraid. She was waiting. And then it hit me. She wasn't looking at me like prey. She was looking at me like someone begging for help. My heart slammed so hard, I thought I'd hear it echo through the trees. I've hunted for 20 years. I know what a bear looks like when it wants to kill you, and this wasn't it. There was no rage in her stare, no wild hunger, only something I'd never seen in an animal before. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I whispered to myself, "What in God's name?" My voice sounded strange in that dead silence. She didn't flinch, didn't move. Her head was low, not in threat, but in what? Submission? No, not quite. It was like she needed me to understand something. Every instinct screamed at me to back away, turn around, leave, but I couldn't move, because she blinked, slowly, and when her eyes opened again, I swear I saw something that didn't belong in the wilderness. Desperation. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. Bears don't plead, they don't ask, they take. Everyone knows that. But then she did something that sent chills down my spine. She turned, not quick, not running, just turned her massive body like a shadow sliding across the snow. She took 3 steps down the trail and stopped. Then, like something out of a dream, she looked back over her shoulder, right at me, and in that second, I felt it. She was asking me to follow. I laughed under my breath because what else could I do? The sound cracked in the stillness like glass breaking. Follow a bear? I must have lost my mind. Yet there I was, frozen, staring at her broad back and the way her fur rippled in the fading light. She took another step, slow, heavy, snow crunching under her paws. Then she paused again and looked back. My gut twisted. "What do you want?" I murmured. My voice trembled, and I hated how small it sounded. I don't know what made me take that first step. Curiosity? Instinct? Something older, buried deep, whispering that this wasn't chance. This was something else. But the moment my boots sank into the snow, I swear I saw it. Her ear flicked back, and for a heartbeat, I thought, relief. I gripped the rifle tighter, my breath puffing in sharp clouds. Every nerve in me screamed, this was suicide. If she turned, I'd never have time to raise the gun. Still, I followed. She moved slowly, deliberately, like she wanted to make sure I kept up. Every dozen steps, she'd glance back. Not like a predator stalking its prey, not like a creature warning me off, like a mother checking if her child was still there. That's when the fear started to mix with something else, something that felt a lot like awe. My boots crunched in her tracks, each one the size of a dinner plate. Her shoulders rolled like living mountains, muscles sliding under fur. And yet, I didn't feel hunted. I felt chosen. I shook my head hard, trying to snap out of it. Bears don't choose people. They kill them, tear them apart like paper. But the deeper we went, the more certain I became. She wanted me there. She needed me there. I don't know how long we walked. Minutes? Hours? Time didn't exist. There was only the rhythm of her paws and the pounding in my ears. Finally, she stopped, dead still. My breath caught like a snare. She turned her massive head and locked eyes with me again. And in those eyes, I swear to you, I saw a question, a plea. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. And then, as if satisfied, she swung her head forward and stepped off the trail, vanishing into the wall of trees. I stood there, heart trying to escape my chest, snow soaking into my boots, every nerve screaming that this was my chance to walk away, to go back to the world where things made sense. I almost did. I almost turned around, but something deep inside whispered, "Not yet." I tightened my grip on the rifle, staring into the darkness where she disappeared, and then I followed. I thought that was it. She'd turn and vanish into the forest, but I couldn't have been more wrong. I stepped off the trail, and the sound of my boots in the snow felt like a gunshot in the silence. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stop, to turn around, to get the hell out of there. But I didn't. She was ahead of me, moving like a shadow through the trees, slow and deliberate, her massive shoulders swaying with each step. And every few strides, she did it again. Turned her head, eyes catching mine, holding me there, like she was making sure I was still coming. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a threat, it was something else. She kept glancing back, like a mother checking if her child was keeping up. My breath hung in front of me in ragged clouds. The cold stung my face, but my palms were slick inside my gloves. My finger twitched near the trigger guard. Instinct was screaming, "Don't follow a bear into the forest, ever." But instinct wasn't running the show anymore. Something deeper was, something I couldn't name. The forest swallowed us. Branches clawed at my jacket as I pushed through, boots sinking into drifts. The deeper we went, the darker it got. The light from the trail was gone, and the quiet, God, the quiet was like being underwater. I studied her as we moved. Her body was a wall of muscle, every movement slow and powerful. But her posture, it didn't fit the predator I knew. Her head stayed low. Her ears weren't flat. There was no rage in her shoulders. If anything, she looked tired, and that hit me like a punch. A tired bear is a dangerous bear, but the way she kept looking back, pausing until I caught up, that wasn't aggression. That was patience. I muttered under my breath, "What are you doing?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the snow and trees. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. She just turned again and pressed deeper into the woods. Every step felt like stepping off a cliff. Was I insane? Following a predator that could kill me in a heartbeat? Alone, miles from anyone? But the truth burned in my chest. I couldn't stop. Not when every look from her said, "Don't leave me now." My mind twisted with possibilities. Maybe she had a kill stashed somewhere. Maybe she was leading me right to it, waiting for me to drop my guard so she could finish the job. The thought sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I tightened my grip on the rifle, tried to steady my breathing. Every shadow looked like movement. Every crack of ice underfoot sounded like the start of a charge. My heart was a drum in my ears, pounding so loud I almost missed the sound. The soft crunch of her paws slowing. She stopped, dead still. I froze behind a tree, my chest heaving. The world narrowed to the steam curling from her fur and the silence pressing against my skull. She turned her head again, and for the first time, I saw something I'll never forget. Her mouth was open slightly, her breath coming heavy, like she'd been running for miles. And her eyes, they weren't wild, they weren't cold, they were pleading. I felt my throat tighten. "What is this?" I whispered. She blinked slowly, then turned and kept going. Not fast, not like a hunter, like a guide. And God help me, I followed again. The trees thinned just enough for a pale shaft of winter light to spill across the snow, turning everything silver. And in that light, her tracks looked impossibly big, like the marks of some ancient creature that didn't belong in this world. I kept staring at those tracks, thinking, if I die out here, no one will ever know why. No one would believe me even if I told them. Another turn of her head, another look that pinned me in place, and in that moment, I knew something with absolute certainty. She wasn't leading me to kill me. She was leading me because she needed me. I just didn't know why yet. I thought maybe she was leading me to her kill, and that would be the end of me. But that wasn't it. The farther we went, the heavier the silence became. At first, I thought it was just the forest muffling sound under the snow, but then I realized there was nothing. No birds, no rustle of squirrels, not even the faint whisper of wind through the pines. It felt wrong, like the whole wilderness was holding its breath. Every instinct in me screamed to turn around, go back to the trail, go back to the world where things made sense. But my boots kept moving, crunch after crunch, following the wide paw prints through the white hush. And then I saw it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, a flicker in her movement, barely there. But when she stepped into a patch of pale light, it was clear. She was limping. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. The bear, the massive, terrifying creature I'd been fearing for the last half hour, wasn't whole. Her left hind leg dragged slightly with every step, leaving a shallow groove in the snow. I stopped dead, staring at that mark, at her slow, heavy stride. My breath fogged in front of me as something inside me twisted hard. Fear started to crack, just a little, and something else seeped through the cracks, something I hadn't expected. Pity. That's when it hit me. She wasn't hunting. She was hurting. I gripped the rifle tighter, but not because I was afraid of her anymore, because suddenly I was afraid of what this meant. A wounded bear is dangerous, unpredictable, desperate. She could turn on me in a heartbeat, but she didn't. She kept moving, head low, breath coming in slow, heavy bursts that plumed like smoke in the cold air. Every few steps, she looked back, and when our eyes met this time, I swear to you, it wasn't just a look. It was a question, a plea so sharp it cut straight through me. I whispered, "What happened to you?" My voice cracked like dry wood. She didn't answer, of course, just turned and pushed deeper into the trees, limping like every step cost her. The forest seemed endless now, a maze of white and black and silence. My boots crunched in her tracks as thoughts tore through my head. How did she get hurt? A fight? A trap? A bullet from someone like me? That last thought hit like a punch. I actually stopped and grabbed a tree, steadying myself as my stomach turned. Someone like me. I stared down at my hands gripping the rifle, at the gloves stained with old blood from another hunt, and for a second, I hated myself. Then she turned her head again, and the world narrowed to those eyes, waiting for me. I didn't know what I was doing anymore. I didn't know why I was still following. This was insane, beyond insane. I was deep in the woods with a wounded bear, something you'd only do if you had a death wish. But it didn't feel like death waiting for me up ahead. It felt like something else, something bigger. I kept walking. Branches whipped at my jacket, the cold biting harder as the trees closed in. My breath burned in my throat, and still, the silence hung thick, pressing against my ears. No life, no sound, just me and her, two creatures stumbling through the frozen world for reasons I couldn't explain. Finally, she slowed, stopped. I froze too, chest heaving, sweat prickling under my clothes despite the cold. She stood there, a dark shape against the pale snow, sides rising and falling with heavy breaths. Then she turned her head, not quick, not sharp, but slow, deliberate. And that look, God help me, that look almost brought me to my knees. There was no wildness in it, no rage, only pain, and something else, something I couldn't name but felt in my bones. I almost turned back. Almost. I even took a step, felt the pull of survival tugging me hard, but then I saw what she wanted me to see. We broke through a tangle of spruce, and suddenly, the forest opened up into a small clearing. The snow here was untouched, a pale sheet of silence under a sky the color of steel. My boots sank deep as I stepped forward, breath burning in my lungs. That's when I heard it, faint, fragile, a sound that didn't belong out here in the frozen stillness. At first, I thought it was wind whistling through the branches, but then it came again, thin, high-pitched, like a squeal smothered by snow, a cry. My blood went cold. My eyes swept the clearing, heart hammering like a war drum. And then I saw it. Just beyond the center of the clearing, a massive tree lay splintered and half buried in white, its roots torn from the earth like broken ribs. At its base, the snow was churned, clawed through with frantic marks, and sticking out from under the shattered trunk. A paw, small, fur matted with ice, barely moving. I sucked in a breath so hard it cut my throat. It wasn't a piece of prey, it wasn't a carcass, it was a cub, trapped. The sound came again, weaker this time, a muffled whimper under the weight of the fallen tree. Oh God. The words tumbled out of me, raw, useless in the dead air. I turned, and that's when I saw her. The bear, the mother. She had stopped just a few feet away from the tree and lowered herself to the ground. Not charging, not warning me off, just waiting. And when her eyes found mine, the bottom dropped out of my world. She looked at me like a mother handing her child to a stranger. Every hair on my body stood on end. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared back at her, my breath coming in ragged clouds. If she wanted me dead, this was it. One swipe, one lunge, and I'd be nothing but blood on snow. But she didn't move. She stayed there, massive and still, her breath rising in soft plumes, her eyes locked on mine with something that made my throat close. Not hunger, not rage, something closer to trust. The rifle felt heavy across my back, suddenly obscene in my hands. I let it slide off my shoulder and drop into the snow. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence, and I flinched, but she didn't. Not even a twitch. Slowly, so slowly it felt like moving through water. I stepped toward the fallen tree. My boots sank deep, every crunch of snow like thunder in my skull. The cub's tiny paw flexed once, a feeble twitch, then stilled again. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely pull my gloves off. My breath tore out in clouds as I dropped to my knees beside the trunk. The cold bit hard, but I barely felt it. The tree was huge, too heavy to move, but maybe I could free enough of the branches. My fingers closed around the nearest limb, splintered and sharp, and I yanked hard. Bark shredded my palms as it gave with a crack. The cub whimpered, a sound so faint it almost broke me in half. Behind me, I heard the mother exhale, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated in my bones. I froze, heart slamming, sure that was the end. But when I turned my head, she was still lying there, still watching. Her eyes weren't wild, they weren't cold. They were something I never thought I'd see in a creature like her. Hope. I ripped another branch loose, teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. Snow and bark showered my face, but I didn't care. I clawed like a madman, adrenaline drowning out the cold, the fear, everything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I cleared enough to see the cub's head, eyes squeezed shut, tiny muzzle flecked with frost. Still alive, barely. I slid my arms under its little body, muscles screaming as I pried it free from the weight of the wood. It came loose with a sucking sound, a choked cry bursting from its throat as I lifted it into the light. For a second, I just knelt there, clutching this trembling scrap of life, breath ragged in the frozen air. And then I looked up. The mother rose to her feet in one slow, silent motion. She didn't roar. She didn't charge. She just stepped forward, each movement like rolling thunder through the snow. My chest locked. My arms tightened around the cub. If this was how it ended, at least it would end with the little one out of the trap. But she didn't attack. She stopped just a breath away from me. And then, soft as a prayer, she lowered her head. I thought freeing the cub would be the end of it. I had no idea what this would lead to. The cub was wedged tight, its tiny ribs heaving under the weight of the fallen tree. I'd managed to pull away some of the smaller branches, but the trunk itself was a monster, too heavy to move without tools. My hands were raw and trembling, blood pricking where bark had torn skin through my gloves. I fumbled for the hatchet on my belt, fingers clumsy from cold and adrenaline. The metal burned against my skin as I gripped the handle. Behind me, the mother shifted. Just a single step, the crunch of snow like thunder. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. Every instinct told me to run, but then I heard it. That sound, a low rumble, not a growl, not a threat. Something softer, almost impatient. I risked a glance. She wasn't coming at me. She wasn't even snarling. She was pacing, slow arcs in the snow, her massive head swinging back toward the cub every few seconds. Every line of her body screamed tension, not anger, but desperation. And that's when it hit me. Every swing of my axe, I could feel her eyes burning into my soul, not with rage, but with hope. The weight of that crushed me harder than fear ever could. She was trusting me with the only thing in this world that mattered to her. And God help me, I couldn't fail. I wedged the axe against the first thick limb and swung hard. The crack of wood split the silence, and the cub whimpered, a sharp cry that punched straight through my chest. "Easy," I muttered, voice shaking as much as my hands. "Hang on, little one, just hang on." Behind me, snow crunched again, closer this time. My breath caught, but I didn't dare look. If I saw her standing over me, jaws inches from my neck, I'd lose it completely. I swung again, and again. Splinters exploded into the air, dusting the snow like shards of bone. My arms burned, my gloves slick with sweat despite the freezing cold. The cub cried louder now, a thin, desperate wail that cut through the stillness like a blade. Every sound was a countdown, a clock ticking towards something I didn't want to imagine. Finally, the branch cracked and gave way. I yanked it free, tossing it aside, and went for the next one. Teeth gritted so hard my jaw ached. Each swing was agony, my muscles screaming, my breath tearing out in clouds. But I didn't stop, couldn't stop, because behind me, she was watching, and somehow that mattered more than my own life. The next branch broke, then the next. My hands felt like meat, my shoulders like fire. I lost track of how many I cut, how many times the axe bit into wood and bounced back with a shock that rattled my bones. And then, the last branch gave way with a groan, splitting in two and tumbling into the snow. For a moment, nothing happened. Just silence, just the cold air burning in my lungs and the wild, frantic pounding of my heart. Then the cub moved. It wriggled free, paws scrabbling against the snow as it dragged itself out from the tangle of wood. Its tiny body shook like a leaf in the wind, eyes blinking against the light. Alive. By some miracle, it was alive. A sound tore from my throat, a laugh, or maybe a sob. I couldn't tell. My vision blurred as I reached down and scooped the cub up in my arms, clutching it against my chest. It was lighter than I expected, its fur stiff with frost, its heartbeat a rapid flutter against my palms. I turned, slow, terrified of what I'd see, and there she was. The mother bear had stopped pacing. She was standing motionless, towering and terrible and magnificent, her breath rolling in slow clouds, and her eyes, God, those eyes, were fixed on me, on the tiny life trembling in my arms. For a second, we just stared at each other, two creatures from different worlds, locked in a moment that felt like the center of the universe. Then I bent down, heart in my throat, and set the cub gently in the snow. It tottered once, then stumbled forward on shaky legs, squeaking as it reached her. She lowered her head, nudging the little one close, pulling it into the thick curtain of her fur. A low sound rumbled from her chest, not a growl, but something softer, something like relief. I sagged back on my heels, muscles trembling, breath tearing out in clouds. Every part of me screamed that this was it, that she'd take her cub and disappear into the trees. I thought she'd take her cub and disappear, but that's not what happened. The cub stumbled through the snow like a drunk, squeaking softly as it wobbled toward her massive frame. She bent down, nose brushing its tiny body with a gentleness that didn't seem possible from something so powerful. She nuzzled it close, checked every inch, then let out a low, rumbling sound that almost sounded like a sigh. I should have felt relief. I should have turned around right then and there, thanked whatever force had kept me alive, and gotten the hell out. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, knees buried in snow, staring like an idiot while the mother bear curled herself around her cub like a living fortress. It was a picture of love so raw, so primal, it punched straight through my chest. And then she looked at me. Not a quick glance, not a warning glare. A look that held me where I knelt like chains. Her eyes found mine, and something in them shifted. She gave the cub one last nudge, then turned, slowly, with a grace that didn't belong in a body that big, and started walking toward me. My heart stopped, literally stopped. My chest locked so tight it hurt. Every survival instinct I had roared awake in an instant. Move, run, do something. But I couldn't. My body wouldn't listen. The snow crunched under her paws, deep and deliberate, as she closed the distance between us. Each step felt like the toll of a bell, counting down the last seconds of my life. 20 feet, 10, 5. She was close enough now that I could see the frost clinging to her fur, the scars etched across her muzzle, the rise and fall of her massive chest. Her breath rolled over me in hot clouds that smelled of earth and pine. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. My hands twitched toward the rifle lying in the snow, but I didn't reach for it. Somehow, deep down, I knew, if I did, it would all shatter. She stopped, right in front of me. For one breathless, endless moment, the world held still. Just me, her, and the silent woods pressing in like a cathedral of ice. And then, she lowered her head, not to strike, not to bite. She lowered her head to the ground, so slow, so deliberate, it stole the air from my lungs. She bowed. A wild bear bowed to me. I stared, frozen, my pulse pounding like a war drum in my ears. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. My throat burned, and before I knew it, tears were spilling hot down my frozen face, because in that single gesture, everything inside me broke. Every wall I'd ever built, every story I'd ever told myself about what wild animals are, gone, shattered like glass under a hammer. This wasn't instinct. This wasn't randomness. This was something else, something bigger than me, bigger than words. She held the bow for what felt like forever, and then, slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes met mine one last time, and in them I saw something I'll never forget for as long as I live. Gratitude, not the human kind, something purer, older, something that didn't need language because it was older than language itself. And then she turned. I watched in a daze as she nosed the cub forward, her massive body wrapping protectively around the little one as they moved toward the trees. Their tracks etched a winding path through the snow, growing fainter with each step until the forest swallowed them whole. I sat there, shaking, tears freezing on my face, feeling like I'd touched the edge of some impossible truth, like the world had cracked open just enough to show me what lay behind the curtain. I thought that was the last time I'd see her, but nature had one more miracle. I don't remember how long I sat there after they vanished. Minutes? Hours? My legs were numb, my hands raw, and still I couldn't move. The clearing felt sacred, like I'd stepped into something I wasn't supposed to see. Finally, I forced myself to stand, slinging the rifle over my shoulder. My body felt like lead as I started back toward the trail, each step heavy in the snow. That's when I heard it, a faint crunch behind me, then another. I froze, heart lurching into my throat. Slowly, I turned and felt the world tilt. She was there, the mother bear, not charging, not even tense, just standing at the edge of the trees, her dark shape carved against the white. Her breath curled in clouds, eyes locked on me. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. For the first time since this started, I felt safe. She stepped forward, snow collapsing under her paws with a soft hiss. My muscles tensed out of habit, but the fear didn't come. Instead, something strange swelled in my chest, a quiet, steady trust that made no sense at all. She turned, slow and deliberate, then glanced back. That same look, the one that had pulled me off the trail, dragged me into her world, and without thinking, I followed. We moved through the trees, the forest swallowing us again. Shadows stretched long across the snow, the last light bleeding out of the sky. My boots crunched in her tracks as the cold bit deeper, but I barely felt it. I didn't ask myself why anymore. I didn't fight it. Something bigger than reason was moving my feet now. Finally, the trees thinned, and we stepped out onto a frozen river. The ice was a mirror, cracked in places, dusted with powdery snow, and there, near the far bank, lay a shape that made my breath catch. An elk, a big one, its body sprawled on the ice, blood pooling in a dark halo against the white. Fresh kill. My stomach tightened as a dozen thoughts tore through my head. Was this hers? Was she leading me to it? Why? I stopped dead as she padded to the carcass. She stood over it for a moment, her massive frame dwarfing the fallen elk. Then, so slow I almost missed it, she stepped aside and looked at me. Not a warning look, not a glare, something else. It was like she was saying, "Thank you," like words, but stronger. I stood there, breath snagged in my chest, staring at her against that pale, endless sheet of ice. The kill at her feet, the cub somewhere safe behind us, and me, a man who'd come out here to hunt, frozen in a moment I couldn't explain if I lived 100 years. My throat burned, my eyes stung, because it hit me like a hammer. This wasn't random. This wasn't instinct. This was a gift from a creature that owed me nothing. I wanted to speak, to tell her I understood, that I didn't need anything, that what I'd been given already was bigger than any prize I'd ever dreamed of. But no sound came out. Only a raw, aching silence as tears blurred the edges of the world. We stood like that for what felt like forever, two beings from opposite worlds, bound together by something deeper than fear or hunger, something older than words. Finally, she turned. No rush, no sound but the soft hiss of snow as her paws slid across the ice. She didn't look back this time. She didn't need to. I thought I understood what happened, that she was saying thank you in the only way she could. But then came the part I'll never forget. I thought it was over when she turned her back on me at the river. I thought that was the last thread of whatever strange bond had tied us together. But I was wrong. She didn't vanish into the trees. Not yet. I saw movement behind her, a small, dark shape against the snow. The cub, limping slightly, but alive, whole. It tottered forward on wobbly legs, and she slowed, glancing back as if to make sure I saw. And then, God help me, she did something I still can't explain. She stopped, lowered her massive head, and with a gentle push of her muzzle, she nudged the cub toward me. I froze. Every nerve in my body screamed, "Don't move. Don't even breathe." But the cub came closer, its tiny paws crunching in the snow, leaving a trail of fragile prints that looked like punctuation marks in the white silence. It stopped right in front of me, so close I could see the frost clinging to its whiskers, the way its fur spiked in the cold. It tilted its head, curious, unafraid, and then, slowly, almost like it had all the time in the world, it sniffed the toe of my boot. Something broke inside me. I sank to my knees without thinking, breath coming in ragged clouds, eyes burning so hot tears froze on my lashes. My hand twitched like it wanted to reach out, but I didn't. Some part of me knew this moment wasn't mine to take. It was a gift. The cub blinked at me once, dark eyes shining like 2 drops of night, and then turned, wobbling back toward the shadow of its mother. And the strangest thing? She waited. She let it happen, like she was introducing us. My throat closed so tight it hurt. The only words that would come were a whisper, cracked and raw. "Go. Just go." She seemed to hear me. Or maybe she didn't need to. She lowered her head again, curling it gently around the cub as it pressed against her side, and for a long, breathless moment, we just stood there, three souls in the middle of a frozen wilderness, bound by something I couldn't name but could feel in every bone. Then she turned. No rush, no sound but the soft drag of her paws through the snow. The cub followed close, its tiny body dwarfed by the shadow of her frame. Step by step, they moved away from me, farther and farther, until the trees swallowed them whole. And then they were gone. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, sacred, like the whole forest was holding its breath, like I'd touched something eternal and the world would never look the same again. I just stood there, staring at the place where they disappeared, until the cold bit through to my bones and I realized my legs were shaking so bad I could barely stay upright. Finally, I turned and started back. Every step felt unreal, like I was walking out of a dream I'd never wanted to wake from. My rifle lay forgotten across my back, nothing but dead weight now. The man who had stepped into these woods that morning, the hunter, was gone. Because that day, I didn't take a life. I gave one back, and for that, I'd been given something I still don't have words for. As they walked away, the forest felt holy, like I had touched something eternal. I thought I'd never see her again, but nature had its own plans. Winter came back harder than anyone expected, the kind of winter that swallows sound, where the air bites deep and the snow crunches like broken glass under your boots. For months, I stayed away from that trail. Not because I didn't want to go, God knows I did, but because some things feel too sacred to disturb. But one morning, late in the season, something pulled me back. Call it instinct, call it madness, call it whatever you want. All I know is, I strapped on my pack, slung the same rifle over my shoulder, and started down that path again. The woods hadn't changed. Same towering pines, same silence thick enough to make your ears ring. My boots traced the same line through the snow, but I wasn't the same man who had walked it before. The hunter in me was gone, left somewhere in that clearing months ago. I reached the river by mid-afternoon. The ice was thick, a silver sheet stretching under a pale sky. Wind slid across its surface with a soft hiss, and for a long time, there was nothing, just me, the breath tearing from my lungs, and the endless hush of winter. And then, I saw her. At first, I thought it was a shadow, a trick of the light, but then it moved. A shape at the far bank, dark against the white, too big to be anything else. The bear. She stood there, massive and still, framed by the black skeletons of the trees. For a moment, the world narrowed to her and me, two specks in the endless wilderness. My throat closed. My legs felt like they'd turned to stone. Then another shape stepped out from behind her, smaller, leaner, moving with the awkward confidence of youth. The cub, grown now, no longer a scrap of life trapped under a tree, but a young bear, strong and steady. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. She didn't come closer, didn't growl, didn't make a sound. She just stood there, the wind stirring the fur along her shoulders, and stared across the frozen river. And then, so slow I almost didn't catch it, she lifted her head. Not high, not sharp, just enough. A small, deliberate motion that spoke louder than any sound I'd ever heard. It wasn't just an animal. It was a mother saying, "I remember." That was it. That tiny gesture shattered me. My knees buckled, and before I knew it, I was down in the snow, hands buried in the cold, tears freezing on my face faster than I could wipe them away. I didn't care. I couldn't stop. I sobbed like a child in the middle of the silent woods, because somehow that wild creature had reached inside me and pulled out everything I didn't know I was carrying. For a long time, we stayed like that, me kneeling in the snow, her standing proud and still on the far bank, The cub pressed close to her side. Two worlds divided by ice, bound by something deeper than words. And then, just as slow as before, she turned. The cub followed, its paws leaving small tracks alongside hers as they slipped back into the shadow of the trees. I watched until they vanished, until the forest swallowed them whole. The silence came rushing back, heavy as the falling snow, and I knew I'd never see her again. Not like that. Maybe not ever. But I didn't need to, because some things don't fade. Some moments carve themselves into your bones, burn themselves into your blood. And that day, on a frozen river under a steel gray sky, a bear taught me something no human ever could. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I'd never believe it. But I did, and I'll never be the same. If you believe animals remember kindness, right, nature never forgets.